One of the biggest myths about leadership is that it starts with someone gives you a title. It doesn't. I have worked with the people who had the title and nobody followed them. I have worked with the people who had the title and nobody followed them. And I have worked with the people who had no authority at all. Yet everyone listened when they spoke. After more than a decade leading teams in healthcare and humanitarian work, here what I have learned. By the time I became a head of programs, I was already leading. So if you are waiting for a promotion before you start leading, you have got it backwards. In this video, I will show you the 3 skills that helped me to build influence long before I ever had a leadership title. If you are new here, I'm Hassanullah. I'm working with healthcare in Sweden and former head of programs with humanitarian organizations. Over the years, I have led field team, managed large donor-funded programs, and work in an environment where decisions had real consequences. What I'm sharing is it is evidence-based and real consequences. This channel is all about evidence-based performance, leadership, and personal growth. And today I want to talk about something a lot of people misunderstand, how leadership actually works. First, let's start by fixing the definitions, because most of people think leadership works like this. First, you get an authority, then you get a title, and then people follow you. This sounds logical. The problem is that in the real life doesn't work that way. Think about your workplace. There are usually someone with a title, and then there is that person everybody runs to when something goes wrong. You know exactly who I'm talking about. I'm talking about the person people trust, the person people ask for advice, the person who somehow influence the decision even when they are not the manager. The researcher call this informal leadership because influence that comes from trust rather than possession. And when you start paying attention, you notice something interesting. Organizations often promote those people later, not because the promotion magically creates leadership, but because leadership was already visible before the promotion happened. The behavior comes first and the title comes later. That is the part most people miss. So what does the behavior actually look like? Let me show you 3 things I have seen over and over again. Skills 1, the first skill is simple. Take ownership before you ask. Early in my career, I noticed a problem that was a communication gap between our communities, the communities we were serving. Important information was missed. The problem was between the community residents and also in the education department. This was about students' participation at school. So misunderstandings were growing and trust was starting to broken. Nobody assigned the problem to me and nobody told me to solve it. Honestly, it was not my responsibility. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. So I started bringing people together. I organized conversations. I organized a dialogue. I organized a safe place where both the community members and the education departments come together to sit around the table and bringing the topics and discuss on it. We had facilitators to facilitate this dialogue impartially. Like set up a simple structure, create a regular rule, rhythm for feedback. A few weeks later, the problems has transformed significantly. But here is the interesting part. Senior leaders started inviting me into discussions that were far above my level at that time. And not because I had the right title, because they had seen how I approach the problems. That is leadership. Leadership begins when you stop asking, is this my responsibility? And instead, start asking, can I help solve this problem? Your job description is not a ceiling. It is the starting point. And one of the fastest way to build influence is quickly ask ownership of a problem. Nobody else solving it. The second skill is that make the people around you better. You understand what I am saying about. Over the years, I have worked with some incredible talented people. But the people who had the most influence were not always the smartest. They were always the most experienced either. They were multiplier. They made everyone around them stronger. When I trained nurses and midwives at a university hospital, I noticed something. Certain students naturally become leaders within their group, not because they dominated discussions, not because they had all the answers, but they become the leaders because they helped others succeed. They shared what they knew. They encouraged people. They pulled others forward. Research consistently shows that helping others succeed is one of the strongest indicators of leadership potential. And honestly, that makes perfect sense. People trust people who invest in them. Now here is the mistakes a lot of professionals make. They treat knowledge like a secret weapon. They think if I keep this to myself, I will be more valuable. But in my experience, the opposite is true. The person who improves five colleagues become more valuable than the person who protect their expertise. If you want to influence, become the person who makes everybody else better. The third skills might be the most important. Stay calm with it when it matters. I work in humanitarian operations where plan changed overnight, funding disappeared, security situation shifted, things went wrong constantly. And every time a crisis happened, you could immediately see who people look to. It was not always the most senior person. It was not always the loudest person. It was usually the calmest person. I saw exactly the same thing in intensive care. When a patient's condition suddenly deteriorates, nobody wants panic. People instinctively move towards the person who stays composed and focused. Psychologists call this emotional contagion. In a stressful situation, people tend to observe the emotional state of those around them, which means your columnist is not just helping you, it's helping everybody else think more clearly too. So here is something practical you try. So here is something practical you can try. The next time your team face a problem, do not rush to the first person talking. Instead, take pause, listen, take a breath, speak a later slower, ask a thoughtful question, then contribute. Do that consistently and you will be surprised how quickly people start viewing you differently. Because calmness communicates competence and competence creates trust. So let's bring this together. Leadership without a title comes down to three things. First, take ownership before you are asked. The second is make the people around you better. And the third one is stay calm when it matters most. None of those requires permission. None requires a management positions, and none required waiting for someone to choose you. In fact, that is exactly how most leadership careers begin. People start acting like leaders long before anyone officially called them one. So here is my challenge for you this week. Look around your team. Find one problem that everyone complains about but nobody owns. And take the first step toward solving it quickly. No announcement needed. If you found this useful, subscribe for more evidence-based insight on leadership, performance, and personal growth. New videos every Thursday. And if you want to hear the story that shaped a lot of my leadership philosophy, watch my video about starting over at 40. Thanks for watching and I will see you in the next video.